So, occupational toxicology is what we do in order to work out our exposure, our dose-response relationship. And so the dose-response relationship basically involves doing lots of unpleasant things to rats and mice, because even though we have quite strong animal rights networks in the world, ultimately, if you were to take populations of humans and gradually expose them to stronger and stronger concentrations of a new hazardous substance, for instance, then you would run into some pretty serious ethical problems very quickly. And so this occupational toxicology is how they determine the potency of a substance. And what they do is they'll take samples of rats, and they expose them to gradually increasing doses of a substance in order to work out at what point it starts to have an impact on their health and behavior. The doses are put up in increments. So you have your first dose at which you've noticed some form of effect. So if you're going up in increments, then if you find that you've got an observable effect here, then the next, so you go back to your last dose where you had no observable effect, and that is termed as the NOEL. Bit of terminology here for you. So that's a no observable effect limit. So then if you carry on working your way up in concentrations, you'll hit a concentration at which you start to have adverse effects on health. And so that concentration, you go back one to the last concentration at which you didn't have an adverse effect on health, and that's the NOEL, the no observable adverse effect limit. No observable adverse effect limit. And so the next one up, of course, is the one which you had the adverse effect. So that then becomes the LOAEL, or the lowest observable adverse effect limit. And so once you've worked out the point at which it starts to have an impact on their behavior, them in general, these are your rats or mice, so chosen because they have very similar physiologies to human beings, despite being much smaller and furrier. The lowest effect, so the lowest adverse effect level, so the concentration, the lowest concentration which causes an adverse effect, then you can then work out what from that, if you expose, so what would be a safe dose to expose humans to. And bear in mind that humans in the working environments or in the world in general need to be safe to be exposed to this, not occasionally, but every single day. And so you've got to rely on, so put your measurements relying on the fact that they may be exposed every single day, because you have no control over the situations they'll be exposed under. And so that is the acceptable daily intake or the tolerable daily intake, so ADI or TDI. So we've got acceptable daily intake, tolerable daily intake, no observable effect limit, no observable adverse effect limit, and lowest observable adverse effect limit. So now you are an expert in working out toxicity. You can, at this point, not I'm thinking less that you're going to be able to go out and do one of these assessments, more that you're going to understand what it is that you're reading.